I will ask Congress to pass legislation ensuring that drug smugglers and human traffickers receive the death penalty. The drug cartels and their allies in the Biden administration have the blood of countless millions on their hands. Millions and millions of families and people are being destroyed.
A trusted hospital director, a quiet neighborhood in Seattle, and a raid that shattered everything. What FBI and ICE agents uncovered in the director's home exposed a secret buried deep below his perfect life. A secret room, a drug cache, and a discovery too perfect that can't be ignored. But the worst part of this raid was yet to come.
Tonight, a local doctor and medical expert specializing in addiction services is facing federal charges himself for allegedly importing cocaine and heroin.
October 27, 2025. The sky was still dark and the air freezing when at exactly 5:27 a.m., a cordon of federal agents from ICE and FBI descended on a quiet home in North Seattle. Its owner, Dr. Lawrence Whitlock, a renowned hospital director with an impeccable reputation. A simple look at his home showed no signs of his involvement in any form of crime. The hallways were adorned with family photos and degrees. It was a whole picture of stability, professionalism, and respect. As agents moved through the living room, kitchen, and bedrooms, all seemed to check out. No one would have guessed that a deeper look into the house would reveal something far darker than just a successful medical career. Within minutes, the facade that Dr. Whitlock had presented began to crumble as the agents started descending a narrow staircase to the basement. On reaching the basement, they found 50 pounds of heroin, enough to kill about 500,000 people. That's about 61% of Seattle's entire population being at risk of being wiped out. Next to the drugs was a heavily secured weapons cache, rifles, handguns, and ammunition crates bearing the marks of cartel connections. This was unlike any other raids. It seemed as though straight out of a crime thriller, except this was real life, and the man who owned the house that was at the center of the crime was supposed to be a beacon of hope for this community. Then a shocker. A secret surgical chamber that had been tucked so expertly behind a false wall that it would have gone unnoticed if the agents had not decided to do a full sweep of the house. Right inside the room were stainless steel tables gleaming beneath surgical lamps. Also, there were rows of scalpels, clamps, and forceps sitting arranged with the kind of precision only a trained surgeon could maintain. At first glance, it looked like a small private operating room, one that a doctor might use for discreet after-hours procedures. But something was suspicious. Nothing about this setup matched legitimate medicine. That discovery was the trigger that made the agents realize they were looking at more than just a drug stash. Whatever they had stumbled upon was a cartel outpost disguised as a medical facility, and the face of it, a well-respected doctor who could not even raise the smallest inch of suspicion. Now, the more they peeled back the layers, the more Dr. Whitlock's double life became undeniable. They had unearthed a trusted medical leader who still doubled up as one of the masterminds in a criminal underworld. All these also led to the narrative shifting. It was evident that this was no longer just a story about drugs. It was now about power, deception, and how far someone could go while hiding in plain sight. But nothing could have prepared them for what waited beyond that first discovery. Within hours, the case took a turn so disturbing that the agents were forced to stop, stare, and wonder what kind of a man they were really dealing with. Federal agents then started digging into Whitlock's financial footprint. In the next few moments, they found 23 shell companies scattered across Nevada, the British Virgin Islands, and Panama. The companies had been registered to operate in the healthcare niche, but an extensive paper trail soon revealed that these were not real hospitals or clinics. They were simply paper entities, ghost firms with no real staff or operations, used as a labyrinth to launder money. The criminal network that Whitlock was a part of knew one thing: using these companies as fronts would help secure anonymity and obscure the real sources and destinations of illicit funds. This is the perfect time to subscribe and watch closely, as the next discovery shows how Whitlock turned medicine into a machine of crime. A trail of financial practices of these companies revealed even more. Through them, millions of dollars flow. The money was labeled as medical grants, hospital procurement fees, or charitable donations. Just perfect to make federal agents glance once and move on without asking uncomfortable questions. But the truth was that none of that money came from philanthropy or cutting-edge medicine. Instead, investigators determined that the funds were pure drug proceeds, profits from heroin, fentanyl, and meth that Whitlock's cartel partners had pushed into the hands of unsuspecting Americans. The very same donations meant to suggest community uplift were in reality the financial runoff of addiction, overdoses, and ruined families. Agents discovered that Whitlock's position in local hospitals gave him rare power, granting him near unlimited access to medical partnerships, charity programs, and regulatory channels. He was perfectly positioned, exactly what the cartel wanted. Driven by greed, he leveraged that influence to control inspections, manipulate city health officials, and quietly pull strings at administrative levels. Investigators even uncovered extensive communications with 20 public officials across Washington state, from deputy sheriffs to surgeons and port employees, all betraying America. It's alarming that those entrusted with public safety and trust would sell out their country for money and power. If a hospital director could betray his duty, who else could? Panic swept city offices, hospitals, port authorities, and police launched emergency audits and investigations, while every Whitlock-linked contract and program was examined. Then came another shocker, the encrypted messages. His email logs were full of phrases like "transfer the supplies to the night ward" and "move the meds to the off-site clinic." The repetitive nature showed that these were not innocent messages. They would soon be interpreted as orders tied to human trafficking. In one folder named Logistics, agents found detailed human trafficking transport plans for 9 persons that had been kidnapped in South America, complete with their medical notes. There were references that also pointed toward a strong likelihood of these people being exploited, and it did not stop at that. The agents also found medical annotations hinting at organ harvesting. Dr. Whitlock was right at the center of cartel operations that went beyond drugs and money laundering to human trafficking and illegal organ harvesting. You'd be forgiven for thinking that the discovery stopped at that. In the same logistics cache, agents found the blueprint for the cartel's next drug delivery: 1 ton of heroin and 1.5 tons of methamphetamine, all planned to move discreetly via Washington's ferry system. All these forced a harsh realization. Whitlock was not a peripheral player helping a cartel. He was one of the architects. 3:40 a.m., October 30th, 2025. Federal commanders gave the go-ahead. The time for action had come. Days of evidence gathering had led to this moment. Their target, a cartel warehouse near Everett, Washington, teetering on the edge of launching a massive drug convoy. While inside, 9 people held captive. With every second counting, the mission was elevated to a high-risk hostage rescue, combining the firepower of the FBI Hostage Rescue Team, HRT, skilled DEA tactical units, ICE's HSI operatives, and DEA's fast medics. As the strike force rolled in, a few spotters were seen on the roof, and body heat scans inside the perimeter indicated that the cartel was ready to fight. But there was no going back. The assault kicked off with a loud beaching charge that tore open a side entrance. Chaos then erupted as agents ducked under a hail of AK-47s, pistols, and crossbows modified for rapid fire, with flashbangs igniting sparks above. Cartel enforcers leapt from behind stacked pallets, throwing Molotovs, with some even striking with machetes. But the team of operatives soon proved that they were born for this. They countered swiftly, shields braced, pistols blazing, as they moved through the smoke-filled aisles. Outside, the chaos continued, as 3 cartel trucks tried to tear through the law enforcement perimeter, but a DEA armored vehicle blocked the lead truck as the agents shot at the tires. Above them, a helicopter spotlight painted the scene in stark white clarity. After about 7 minutes, the chaos died down. Agents then proceeded to cut open a reinforced shipping container. Contents of the container? All 9 hostages, bound but alive. Eventually, the strike force took stock: 2.5 tons of drugs, dozens of firearms, and a criminal network bleeding out by the second. What started as a raid in North Seattle quickly grew into one of the largest corruption and trafficking investigations in Washington state history. The operation had proved one fact beyond doubt. This was the beginning of the end for a cartel empire built under the cover of medicine. When agents finally sat down in the evidence room, nobody expected the investigation to widen as rapidly as it did. With each document analyzed, it became increasingly evident that Whitlock had not been responsible for corrupting only a handful of people. Piece by piece, investigators realized he had built an entire ecosystem of cooperation that spanned far beyond what anyone initially imagined. The network was so extensive and so deeply connected that even senior experts admitted it would take months to fully purge his influence. Every agency he had quietly infiltrated needed to be dismantled layer by layer before the damage could truly be undone. Then, another problem started cropping up. As these details leaked to the public, a wave of unease swept across the city and state as a whole. In fact, the realization that a respected hospital director had managed to build and maintain such a sprawling criminal network without raising alarms shook communities well beyond Seattle. People across America began asking the same unsettling questions. If something this elaborate existed right under the nose of regulators and administrators, how many other networks were silently thriving in other cities? To add on to that, how many layers of corruption were still hidden inside institutions meant to keep citizens safe? Those questions carried an even darker implication. If Whitlock's operation had gone unnoticed for so long, then how many Americans were unknowingly staring at the risk of being caught in the blast radius of trafficking pipelines, drug routes, and synthetic narcotics that continued to flood the streets? Parents, teachers, healthcare workers, and public officials also started voicing their fears. They pointed out that the overdose crisis, already devastating communities in America, might be fueled by other undetected rings operating with similar precision and institutional access. However, the system was quick to reaffirm its effectiveness and sheer ruthlessness to those attempting to destroy the lives of Americans. Within days, the hammer dropped. Federal prosecutors announced 31 indictments, many of them targeting public employees who had quietly opened doors for Whitlock's criminal machine. Meanwhile, the man at the center of it all faced a staggering list of accusations: drugs trafficking, human exploitation, organ-related offenses, bribery, and long-term corruption under color of authority. Reporters would later describe it as one of the most expensive indictments in Washington's history. The atmosphere outside the courthouse arraignment felt heavy. Some people were seen crying, perhaps wondering how such a respected professional decided to involve himself in practices that went against his oath to protect lives. Others shouted in anger, while another faction simply stood silent, attempting to make sense of how someone entrusted with the health of thousands in Seattle had orchestrated such devastation. Regardless, to everyone, this was the highest form of betrayal. But there was another side to this story, one that many seemed to overlook. The system had cracks, yes, but many people in it had risen above the cracks and refused to ignore anomalies. Those that followed leads, no matter how uncomfortable, eventually helped find these cracks and paved the way for subsequent interventions. In the end, justice might not have been perfect, but it endured.